Hey everybody, welcome back to Rock's CTM Test World. Oh, it's been a while. It's been a while, but we're back again with the release of the latest 1.14 snapshot for the Java Edition Minecraft. A lot of new map maker related features have been added to the game, and I think it deserves a little bit of showing of some of the stuff we can do now because of it. It's a lot of it is stuff that we could have done before, but to some degree it's a lot more optimized and it's just a lot better than we could have done before. So let's start it all out. So typically with CTMs, to some degree, not in all CTMs, but in a good chunk of CTMs, there is this concept of a super pick. It's kind of a coal miner's pick to some degree, where eventually you get to the point where maybe it's early on, maybe it's later on in the map maker wants you to be able to more freely be able to get coal because it's not as much of a problem. Typically this is done by just a pick that has a whole ton of fortune, has a whole bunch of efficiency, and that's kind of how it's handled prior to 1.14. However, we do have some options with 1.14, so I'm just going to give myself a pick. This is an iron pick with some lore text that says Coal Miner 1. So we're going to give ourselves a Coal Miner 1 pick. So typically with a normal iron pick, you're going to... typically with a normal iron pick, you're just going to get yourself a bit of coal. That's kind of the extent of it. However, we've made some modifications to our world. We'll get into the details of that in a second, but as you can see here, we have a coal miner's pick 1, mining this thing, and we get a coal block. Ooh. So one of the major things I think that a lot of map makers are going to, hopefully, will take a lot of advantage of post or 1.14 and beyond, is taking advantage of block loot tables. So with 1.14, the introduction of loot tables for blocks was introduced, and this actually opens up a lot of avenues for us, and especially with regards to a lot of the intricate details that have been added to allow us to do lots of cool and crazy interesting things. So for example, the ability for an iron pick to mine coal block and drop coal ore to drop a coal block is specifically done through loot tables. So the only thing that's changing between this pick and this pick is purely just the lore text, and the loot table is specifically checking up on that. So what else can we do with that? Oh, all kinds of crazy stuff. So this allows us to make our own custom enchantments. I think 4 years ago I made the first video that I'm aware of in regards to custom enchantments. I called it ability attributes at the time, but it was essentially custom enchantments. But it allows us to do a lot of interesting, more interesting things. So as you can see, we have pick. We have our coal pick. Not really anything interesting. Then we take our smelter pick, and we start getting some iron ingots. Now again, this is stuff we could, in theory, have done before, just through stats and commands and functions and all of that, and even advancements, but it becomes a little more, to some degree, a little more easier now with the block loot tables. So I've done a whole bunch of talking about the block loot tables. Let's actually look at the block loot tables for each of these interactions, and give a little bit of feedback on that so you can actually understand what's going on. Alright, as you can see on the screen, we have a bit of copy of the JSON file that's associated with this specific block, which in this case is the coal ore. To preface this, you will find a much more convenient looking link down in the description that should show you the full JSON file versus the partial bits and pieces that we'll be talking about in these various sections here, and you should be able to just copy and paste what you see in the links into your worlds if you want to have it functionally working. But let's get this started with the coal coal ore that we're looking at first here. So as you can see, we start out with the type. It's a block, has a pool, has one role, and it has various entries. So this is where we get into the more interesting and technical bits of the loot table. A new concept that has been introduced with 1.14, or as far as I'm aware, is the concept of alternatives. This means that there are multiple different entries in a set of pools, and it's kind of based off of kind of matches, or like it's based off of kind of a, if this matches, go with this, else does this match, does this match, does this match, and then all else fails, it falls down to kind of a last item. So this kind of goes into two separate chunks. The first of this specific alternatives in this entry pools is that does this tool have the enchantment Silk Touch? So some of the basic premises of this loot table is actually based off of the original loot table. So we're trying to keep this as vanilla as possible. So with this section that we see right here, this is just matching for Silk Touch in order to drop a coal ore. So this is all pure vanilla enchantment / loot table based functionality. So it's not anything different. We're not completely overriding the loot table. We're purely injecting that at this certain condition that we want to do. We want to drop the coal block. So this right here, as we're saying, is just the pure chunk of code that's chunk of JSON that's saying, if it's Silk Touch, do what you normally do in the vanilla standpoint. Then, if we jump forward a little bit, we can see another alternatives. This is kind of where we get into the nit and gritty of it all. And we can see in this top chunk here, this is where we actually add in our chunk of JSON that is trying to match the tool versus NBT. So we're saying if our item that we're checking against, we're checking if the matching of the tooling of it is versus an NBT. If it has a lore text within the NBT that is coal miner 1, we want to drop a coal block. This is the big chunk of the code that is actually determining this logic. And then after that, then if the next little chunk of it is basing it off of, or the next, I guess, yeah, it's the next chunk of it, more or less. It's basing it off of traditional vanilla logic. You know, if something explodes near it, drop this, else check for fortune, drop it based on that. So this upper part of this second little picture is actually where we're injecting some logic to say that if we have a certain lore text on our item, we want to drop something different. So with that, if we go ahead and we look at the iron ore, we can see the similar thing within the iron ore. So, you know, we have this first block within the iron ore loot table of checking for match tool as a condition with the predicate of the specific lore text of an MBT dropping an iron ingot. So it's not necessarily difficult logic, it's adding it within the logic that is already there. So the big thing that you have to consider when writing this logic is that we need to take advantage of this Minecraft alternatives. And so that, you know, when we create these entry pools, we need to have these alternatives as multiple children of it, and then being able to kind of determine what we want based off of certain conditions. So yeah, I think with all of that, you should have a good idea of the basics of being able to create loot tables by lore text custom enchantments, and then you should be able to go from there. So I look forward to see some interesting things based off of that. Again, you'll see some links down in the description that should lead you over to the full JSON write-up for both the iron ore as well as the coal ore, and should be able to start getting creative from there. But that everyone is going to do it for today. Thanks for joining as always, everyone, and I'll catch you all next time. Bye.